In this episode of Better Data, Better Results, we are going to talk about a problem which plagues industrial specialty chemicals. Today, we are going to look at empty tanks. In continuous injection systems, chemical tanks hold specialty chemicals or additives, which are typically injected using a plunger or a diaphragm pump. To maintain effective treatment, you obviously need chemicals in your tank. Unfortunately, many industrial chemical management programs have a hard time keeping tanks from running dry. Technicians often have many tasks to handle, and inventory checks often don't get completed. In fact, WellAware baseline data suggests that 1 in 15 chemical injection tanks is empty at any given time. This is a huge problem. Without full tanks, we don't get chemical injection. And without chemical injection, we don't get asset integrity, production assurance, quality control, or safety incident avoidance. Clearly, we need a better way to identify and prevent tanks from running empty. Fortunately, WellAware On Demand Chemical makes this easy. Let's see how we can identify, respond to, and avoid this issue altogether. So I'm looking at the WellAware On Demand Chemical platform, and I notice on this particular site I've got some problems. First thing I notice is the injection variance performance is very poor. I'm expecting to inject 18 gallons per day when in fact I'm doing less than 1. And what I also notice is that my chemical availability score is 0, and that's because my tank is empty. Let's look at this in the chart. If we take this data, let's back it out a week, and we'll isolate the product volume for a second. Sure enough, we see the problem right here. The tanks run empty. We can actually overlay the pump injection rate set point, which has been 18 gallons per day, and we can look at the observed usage rate and see how before the tank ran empty, we were injecting right on target, and of course now we're not injecting at all. So how do we avoid this in the future? Well, the simplest thing we can do is create an alarm or multiple alarms. So let's just look at how we could do that. So we'll go to our Alarms tab, and let's edit the alarm conditions for this site. So we'll create a new alarm for the chemical tank asset and the percent full. And the reason we use percent full is it's a more generic measurement that we can actually apply this alarm across multiple sites. We'll set a low threshold alarm and we'll call this tank low. We'll say we want to get notified when the tank is 15% full, and we'll give this an alarm precedence of 50. It's a standard alarm. Click save, and now that alarm exists. Now let's say I wanted to add another alarm to escalate this incident. So I just add new, chemical tank, percent full, low threshold alarm. Now let's say we'll call this tank very low and at 5% full. We'll give this a 100 precedence, which means it is the most important alarm we could get for this particular asset. Click save, and now we have two alarms, a low and a very low. So we'll get notified when the tank is low, and we'll get an escalation notification when the tank becomes very low. Now alarms can be helpful, but they're not perfect. The problem with alarms is that we often only notice the problem after it exists, when in reality, we want to see these things coming. This is where reports come into play. Let's look at how we can use WellAware reports to see these problems coming and get them addressed before they cause us any issues. So we'll go over here to the Dashboards and Reports tab, and let's take a look at the Estimated Days to Empty report. And I'll run this report for the All Sites group, and this is what I see. So immediately I'm able to prioritize the tanks by which ones are at most risk of running empty or maybe already are empty. So not only do we see the Breeze site that we were looking at prior, we see two other sites, the Ryan and Mahomes site, that are nearing empty. We not only have some important information like the chemical, the size of the tank, the current inventory, the observed usage rate, we also have the estimated days to empty for each site and the projected empty date. This helps us identify when we need to get chemical to that location so the tanks don't run empty. The great thing about these reports is that they can be exported in a number of different formats, from PDF to Excel to CSV, even as a PowerPoint. And we can also schedule these reports so that they hit our inbox every day, every week, or every month, depending on how often we want them. So I could easily set up myself to receive this report every morning as a chemical account manager or as an operational manager so that I can see which tanks are at risk of running empty. And finally, one of the best ways to use WellAware data is with our API. WellAware's REST API gives you access to all of the data that you see in our platform, allowing you to integrate with existing systems. In this case, it might be great to integrate this data with your supply chain system. We could use the data feeds and we could actually get data for particular sites, for particular measurements to drive better supply chain optimization. Our API is very rich and allows massive third-party integration to accomplish the things that you and your team need to get the job done.